Welcome to Drive the Daf, clear, structured explanation of the daily daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Rosh Hashana Daf Lamed Dalid is the last full daf in the Masechta. It discusses the form and structure of Tekiyas Shofar. Begins by comparing two brises which give alternate sources for the halacha that there are three sets of Tekiyas Shofar, that you have to blow the shofar, and then you have to have a Tekiya before and after every Teruah. We'll compare these two brises, why they learn their alternate sources, and why they don't agree with the other source. Gemara will then discuss the halachos of Shvarim and Teruah, and Shvarim Teruah, and how we arrive at the current pattern that we use. Gemara will then discuss what happens if people stretch out their minimal blowings over the course of the day with large interruptions in between. Is there a problem to interrupt in the middle of Tekiyas Shofar, Kriyas Megillah, Hallel, Kriya Shema, and all these things? Gemara will then speak about somebody who doesn't have a shofar. If the Tekiyos are ma'akev each other, if you can do some of them, if you can't do all of them. The brachos of Shemona Esrei of Rosh Hashana, if you can do some of them, if you can't do all of them. What should you do if you have a choice between the brachos? If you have a choice between saying Shemona Esrei with a minyan or Tekiyas Shofar, you can't get both of them. Which one should you choose? Gemara will also then get into the concept of Chazaras Hashatz, that is the Shemona Esrei said out loud by the Shliach Tzibor. Are we Yotza with that, and what is the function of that? And that'll take us really to the end of the Masechta. So let's begin. We had seen a brisa quoted that gave us the source of the halacha that we do a tekiya before and after every teruah, and that there are three sets of tekiya, teruah. And now we're bringing another brisa, and we'll compare the two. So the two sources, we'll review the brisa we saw earlier. The two brises are differing over whether we learn the tekiya before and after every teruah. Do we learn that from Tekiyas Shofar on Yovel Yom Kippur, or do we learn it from the blowing of the trumpets in the Midbar? According to the first brisa, it's learned from the Tekiyas Shofar on Yovel of Yom Kippur, and that's connected to Rosh Hashana with a Gzeira Shava or a Hekesh. The Gemara says you have either options from the fact that it says B'chodesh HaShvi, or it says HaShvi, Shvi, Shvi, both by Yom Kippur and by Rosh Hashana. Now, the source that Yom Kippur had a Tekiyas Shofar before and after is because it says V'havarta Shofar Teruah, and it says Taviru Shofar. That means you should blow a Havarta Shofar, you should pass a Tekiyas Shofar before the blowing, and you should have Taviru Shofar, you should have passed the Shofar already after the blowing. How do you know that there are three sets? So this brisa says because it says the word Teruah three times in the discussion of Rosh Hashana. In the Psukim, it says Yom Teruah Yolachem, and it also says Shabboson Zichron Teruah, and it says V'havarta Shofar Teruah. So three times the word Teruah, so we know that there are three sets. One's for Malchus, one's Zichronos, and for Shofros. To keep before and after, because it says Taviru Shofar and V'havarta Shofar. Now, the other brisa gets a different source, and that's from the blowing of the trumpets in the Midbar. That is when the camp, when the Klal Yisrael began to move, so they had special trumpets that were made, and they blew the shofar, and the Torah over there says Usakatem Teruah, and then it says that when they call the camp together, then they say Tekiya, they say Tiska'u V'loi Teriu. So says the Gemara, Usakatem Teruah teaches me that first a Tekiya and then a Teruah. Now you may ask, Usakatem Teruah, maybe that just means blow a Teruah. How do you know that the word Usakatem is referring to a Tekiya? Maybe it's just referring to blowing the Teruah. So for that you say, because it says later, it says you do a Tiska'u V'loi Teriu, that indicates that Tiska'u does not mean the Teruah, because there's something called Tiska'u V'loi Teriu that obviously refers to a Tekiya. So we know that these are two different things, Usakatem and Teruah. That's how you know there's a Tekiya before. How do you know there's the Tekiya afterwards? Because the Torah also says Teruah Yiska'u, and therefore you see that after the Teruah comes another Yiska'u. Now, there's another variation to that. There's Shmuel ben Shebechon ben Breika in the Brisa here. It's not that it says Teruah Yisku, it's that when the second group of Shvatim traveled, it said Uskatim Teruah Shenis. You blow a second Teruah. So the Gemara says, what do I need it to say Shenis for? It said by the first group, it's Akatim Teruah. It could say by the second group, it's Akatim Teruah. Why does it have to point out to me that it's a Shenis? I know it's a Shenis. I can do the math. What it means to tell you is that every time there's a Teruah, there should be a Shenis. There should be a Tekiah twice, once before and one after. So there you have two sources that in the traveling of the Midbar, the blowing of the trumpets had a Tekiah before and after every Teruah. Now all we need to do is link that to Rosh Hashanah, and we do that with the fact that the word Teruah is used in both situations, both about Rosh Hashanah and about the blowing of these trumpets. The word Teruah is used. It's Xer Shava links to two, and therefore we know that you have to have this pattern of Tekiah, Teruah, Tekiah on Rosh Hashanah as well. So these are the two sources. Now this Brisa also brings a source that you have to blow 3 sets. It brings the same source, but there's a variation here. It also says you have the psukim of Shabbos and Zichron Teruah, Yom Teruah, and Vahavarta Shofar Teruah, 3 different psukim. But here the Brisa says that you can't use all of these for a drasha, and therefore only some of them are deraisa. The other ones are midivrei sofrim, that were Chazal were mataken, or the Nevi'im were mataken, that you should have a set of Tekiah Shofar for every one of Machis, the Chonos and Shofar, so we have to add. As a Machakis in the Brisa, if one is deraisa because one of these psukim is extra for a limud, but 2 are needed, or if 2 of them are deraisa because only one pasuk is needed, and therefore there's 2 that are extra for the limud, but 1 is needed for some other limud. Now, what's the other limud? So if 2 of these are deraisa, because 2 of these psukim, the 2 of the times where teruah is used as extra, and the only one that's needed is for a limud, the one limud that is needed is the word teruah to link the Tekiyas Shofar of Rosh Hashanah to the other Tekiyos, either of Yovel or of the Midbar, and this Tana is linking it to the Midbar. So that's what he uses it for. Now, according to the opinion that only one of the times the Torah says Teruah on Rosh Hashanah is extra, and therefore only one is deraisa, the other 2 are derabanan, because I need 2 of those psukim where it says Teruah. What do I need the second one for? Versus the second one is where it says Yom Teruah, and that's to teach me that Teruah can only be done during the day. Tekiah Shofar can only be done during the day. It cannot be done at night. The Gemara says, how does the other Tana know that? He says that pasuk is extra. You don't need the drasha of Teruah of Tekiah of Shofar can only be during the day and not at night. The Gemara says that's simple. He links it to Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, it says clearly can only be done during the day because it says B'Yom HaKippurim, during the day of Yom Kippur. That's when you do Tekiah Shofar when it's Yovel, and therefore you don't need this pasuk over here. So Gemara says, hold on a second. He's linking Tekiah Shofar and Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. So if he's linking to Yom Kippur anyway, why does he have to have this whole drasha of the Tekiah Teruah Tekiah by linking it to the Midbar? Let him say like the first Brisa. The first Brisa said that it's linked to the Midbar, that Tekiah Shofar of Rosh Hashanah is linked to Yom Kippur, and he learned Tekiah Teruah Tekiah from there. So if this Tana anyway is linking to Yom Kippur, why does he have to come up with a whole other drasha and linking it to the Tekiah Shofar in the Midbar, to the Tekiah of the trumpets in the Midbar? So Gemara says, the problem is that he doesn't hold that there is a limud on Yom Kippur that you need Tekiah Teruah Tekiah. He doesn't hold of the Taviru Shofar and of Havarta Shofar. He says that is not meant to teach you that there's a Tekiah Teruah Tekiah. Well, then what is that for? Because that's to teach you 2 other halachos. When it says Vahavarta Shofar, that's like Rav Masa, which we've seen early in the Masechta, that you have to blow the shofar the right way. You have to blow from the small end to the big end. Even if you reshape it, you can't turn it upside down and blow it the other way. It has to be the way that it is positioned on the animal's head. And as the phrase Taviru Shofar, that's to teach me that that's for the following reason. If it only said Taviru once, I would know that you're supposed to blow the shofar. I would think you just have to carry the shofar. Taviru just means to pass. So you should pass by with the shofar. Maybe all that means is you have to walk through the camp with the shofar. How are you supposed to blow it? So therefore it says Taviru twice. One to tell me that you carry it, and the other to tell me you actually have to blow it. Now our Tana, that our Brisa that we had earlier, that actually does learn Tekiah Teruah Tekiah from this Taviru, he can't use the word Taviru for these 2 drashas. He doesn't hold that you need them. First one, he says that the fact that it says that you have to blow The fact that we learned from the word taviru that you have to blow the shofar being held correctly and not upside down, that I could learn without it being an extra pasuk. That's just from the fact that the Torah uses a funny word. It says ta'aviru instead of tisku. It says you should pass a shofar, and it doesn't say that you should blow a shofar. That teaches me that it has to be done this way, but that still doesn't mean that the pasuk's not extra. Just that the Torah, the choice of words teaches me that halacha, and I don't need. That doesn't explain why I need the pasuk altogether. As far as carrying it in your hand and not blowing it, I would never think that, because the word ta'avir was used elsewhere to mean a production of sound, such as when Moshe had to make an announcement in the Machane to stop bringing the donations for the Mishkan. It said, Vayaviru vayitzav Moshe vayaviru kol b'machane. They passed a sound through the camp. Just like there, the word yaviru means to make a sound, so ta'aviru shofar also means to make a sound. I would never think otherwise, and therefore I do not need to have that drasha. One final thing, the Gemara says, according to the Tana that learns from the Brisa of the blowing of the trumpets in the camp, how do you know that in Rosh Hashana you blow shofar and not trumpets? Rosh Hashana doesn't say anything about a shofar. It just says blow. How do I know what it is? So the Gemara says that's learned from a different pasuk in Tehillim. Tiku b'chodesh shofar b'kesem chagenu. Should blow on the new month the shofar on the day that on the holiday in which the moon is hidden. What is the holiday in which the moon is hidden? What is the holiday that's on Rosh Chodesh when the moon is disappeared? That could only be Rosh Hashanah, and it says clearly, Tiku b'chodesh shofar, that you're blowing the shofar. Okay, this concludes this discussion in the Gemara. The Gemara now moves on to the concept of Shvarim Teruah and Shvarim Teruah. So we had seen thus far that you need a Tekiah Teruah Tekiah. That means that each set of Tekiah shofar for Machis, Zechonis, and for shofars respectively only has to be 3 shofar blowings, a Tekiah, a Teruah, and a Tekiah. The Gemara says that Rabbi Avo instituted that you blow Tekiah, Shvarim, Teruah, Tekiah. Shvarim being the 3 short blasts that are shorter than a Tekiah, but longer than what we call a Teruah, which is what the Gemara calls Yavava, which is like a wailing sound, or Yalala. So the Gemara says, where did Rabbi Avo come up with this? The Torah says Teruah. It doesn't say to do 2 Teruahs. So if Teruah means a shvarim, then if it means a groaning sound, which is 3 longer sounds, then you should blow tekiah, shvarim, tekiah. And if when the Torah says teriyu, it means to blow what we call a teruah, that's 9 choppy sounds, so let him do tekiah, teruah, tekiah. So the Gemara says he wasn't sure, and therefore he said to do both of them. The Gemara says, but he didn't accomplish it, because he said do shvarim, teruah. There, whichever one it is, the other sound is interrupting. If it's a shvarim, the teruah is interrupting between the tekiah and the shvarim. And if it's a teruah, then the shvarim is interrupting between the tekiah and the teruah. So this system doesn't work. So Gemara says, you're right, he blew both of those options. He blew all 3. He blew tekiah, shvarim, tekiah. He blew tekiah, teruah, tekiah to take care of both those impossibilities. And he also blew tekiah, shvarim, teruah, tekiah, just in case that's what you were really supposed to do. You're supposed to do both sounds. So the Gemara says, well, then why does it do the other order? Why doesn't it do tekiah, teruah, shvarim, tekiah? Maybe that's the right order. Gemara says, no, there's no possibility that that's the right order, because people, when they cry, they first moan and then they wail. The order is that first you have a longer groaning sound and then you have a shorter sobbing sound. It does not go in the reverse order. Alright, now the Gemara moves on to a discussion of what happens if a person spreads out his tekiah shofar throughout the day with large breaks in between. Gemara quotes Rabbi Yochanan, who says if somebody heard all 9 tekiyos through 9 hours of the day, 1 every hour with a long break in between, he's yaitza. The Gemara quotes a brisa that says that as well. Somebody hears 9 tekiyos, even here the brisa adds from 9 different people spread out throughout the day, what the Gemara here calls b'seirugin, broken up. Yaitza as well. Now there's a machlekes if there's another girsa here in the brisa. There's a machlekes Rishonim, Rashi, and others, as to whether it also says another halacha that if 9 people blow each of the sounds all at once, 9 different people, each blowing a different sound, are you yaitza with that? Machlokes if you yaitza that or not. The girsa would be that you are not yaitza. According to Rashi, there's no reason why you shouldn't be yaitza. According to Tosfos, you're not yaitza because it's out of order. The teruah has to have a tekiah before and after, not at the same time, not from somebody standing to his left and his right. Alright, so we've seen the halacha that you're allowed to blow when there's a large hefsek between the tekiyas. The Gemara asks, how could Rabbi Yochanan say that? We know that Rabbi Yochanan says you're not allowed to break things up, because we have a quote. Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Shimon ben Yochid Tzadok, somebody saying Hallel or reading Megillas Esther, and he takes a break in the middle, if the break is long enough to have finished the entire thing, then he has to start over. He's not yet to that. So how could he say here that you can break up to get shofar? So Gemara says, well, that's what Rav Yechon said in Rav Shimon ben Yehotzadek. He himself does not agree. That is what Rav Shimon ben Yehotzadek holds. He doesn't hold that way. So Gemara says, not so fast. We have another conversation where Rav Yechanan, who was walking with Rabbi Havo in the street, and they came to a filthy area where they were not allowed to say Kriya Shema, and Rabbi Havo was in the middle of saying a Kriya Shema, so he stopped. And when they passed by that area and he could resume, he turned to Rabbi Yechanan and he said, can I continue saying Kriya Shema or not? And he said to him, if your break was long enough to finish the Kriya Shema, you got to start over. You can no longer continue. So Gemara says again, you see, the Rabbi Yechon holds that if you stop long enough to finish, you're not Yotza. Even himself holding that way, not just quoting Rav Shimon ben Yehotzadek. So Gemara says, no, Rabbi Yechon was not telling him that he holds that way. Rabbi Yechon was telling him, you hold that taking a break is a problem. Rashi points out, you also have to hold. Rashi points out there's also another issue here, and that's whether if you're taking a break because you're not allowed to continue because there are filthy things around, is that also in Hashon, Rabbi Yechon holds that that's not a problem because you're allowed to say Kriya Shema in a dirty street, just have to cover your mouth with your hand. But here, Rabbi Yechanan was saying, I hold you were allowed to say Shema, and I hold that you shouldn't have taken a break, and even if you took a break, you can continue. However, you obviously disagree with me, and you hold that you're not allowed to take a break, and if you do take a break, are you allowed to continue or not? According to you, it depends. It should depend. According to your opinion, then that's a problem. It should depend on whether or not you had time to finish the entire Shema during your break, in which case you would have to start over. Okay, the Gemara quotes a brayso that introduces a new topic. Are the Tekiyas Shofar ma'akev? Are they necessary for each other? Meaning, can you do some and not all of them? And are the brachos of Shemona Esrei, the Malchus, the Chonos, and Shofar, are they ma'akev each other? Now, Rashi's girsa was, is the shofar ma'akev the brachos, and is the brachos ma'akev the shofar? But most Rishonim have the other girsa, and the question here is, are the tekiyos ma'akev other tekiyos, and are the brachos ma'akev other brachos? The question therefore would be, if you can't do all the brachos, or if you can't do all the tekiyos, should you do some? So this brayso here rules that the halacha is that they are not ma'akev each other, and if you can only do some, you should do some. That's true, the brayso says, only for the tekiyos of ta'anesim. That's fast days, not Rosh Hashana Yom Kippur, fast days in which we added extra brachos to Shemona Esrei in order to bring rain, and we did extra tekiyos shofar. However, the tekiyos and the extra brachos of Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur are ma'akev each other. You cannot do some unless you could do all of them. What's the source for that? And it's because, like we've seen, Hashem says on Rosh Hashanah you should say Malchus, Zechonos, and Shofros. Malchus in order to make me king over you, Zechonos in order that the recollection of your deeds should come before me for the good, and you should do it through the shofar, and that's why you say shofar. So therefore it's all one unit that's linked together. You can't do some without the other. Alright, the Gemara now quotes a halacha we've seen in the Mishnah, that if you got a shofar in the middle or after you finish the Shemona Esrei of Rosh Hashanah, you should just do all the tekiyos together. You don't have to break them up like you would have broken them up, one for Malchus, one for Zechonos, one for Shofros, had you had the shofar while you're saying Shemona Esrei. So the Gemara says this seems to indicate that if you had a shofar and you could do it properly, you're supposed to break them up. You're supposed to do one set of blowing for Malchus, one set for Zechonos, and one set for Shofros. So Gemara quotes an incident over here where if Papa Bar Shmuel was davening Shemona Esrei, and he told his helper, he told his servant, when I give you a sign that I finished one section, blow shofar for me then. Okay, so I'm going to do Malchus, then I'll make an indication for you, and then you blow shofar for me. And the same thing for Zechonos and for Shofros. So Gemara says that Rava said to him, you don't have to do that, because the halacha that you're supposed to combine the tekiyas shofar with the Malchus, Zechonos, and Shofros only applies to a tzibur, only applies to a congregation. One person who's davening by himself, you could just do all the tefillos and all together, and all the tekiyas shofar together afterwards. Gemara quotes a brayso that supports this halacha, that this is only by tekiyas shofar. This is only by tekiyas shofar and tefillah of a tzibur, but not tekiyas shofar and tefillah of an individual. Now, the Gemara continues, and it says somebody has a choice between tekiyas shofar. This is part of the brayso, actually. If someone has a choice between tekiyas shofar and tefillah of Shemona Esrei b'tzibur, what should he choose? So Gemara says he should choose the Tkiyas Shofar. Should go what would be the case? Gemara says if he could go to one of two towns. One town he'll have a minion for Shemana Esrei, and one town he'll have Tkiyas Shofar. He should go to the one with Tkiyas Shofar. Gemara says, well, obviously Tkiyas Shofar is a mitzvah d'oraisa. Tefillah b'tzibur is not. Gemara says no. Chiddush Yeris is that even if you're not sure, right? If you go to the town with the tzibur, you'll be able to find 10 people and you'll make a minion for sure, not a problem. But Tkiyas Shofar, by the time you get to the town, they may have already finished blowing shofar and you missed it. So it's only a suffix. Still, nevertheless, a suffix Tkiyas Shofar is more important than a certain minion, and therefore you should go to the place where you have a suffix Tkiyas Shofar. Okay, now the Gemara gets into the topic which will take us to the end of Masechta, and that is the tefillah of the shots of the shliach tzibur. Is that what we're yotze with, and is that fulfilling the mitzvah for everyone, or is everyone only yotze with their own shemasa? So we'd seen in the Mishnah that's a machlokes between the Tanakama, between the Chachamim, and Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel said that the main thing is the tefillah of the tzibur. That's the only thing that needs to be done. And the Chachamim had said that everybody has to do their own tefillah. They're yotze with their own tefillah. So we'll go to Brisa that extends this machlokes. The Gemara says that it explains the conversation. The Gemara says that Rabban Gamliel said to the Chachamim, according to you, why do the tzibur need to be mispal at all?
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.